Welcome to VW 8.5.
Today we're going to discuss the sum and difference formulas. Now these are a bit challenging to remember, but through today's class, hopefully we use them so much you will remember them. So quickly just take time to copy down what's in this 3D box here. Notice how they're all addition. So those are all the sum formulas. So again, you're going to want to just take some time, copy all these formulas down. Notice how there are three, and they all have alpha plus beta. And for a minute, just pause the video and just write it down. Once you're done, then we'll start again. Okay, so at this point, hopefully you've copied it down. So you notice that sine alpha plus beta is sine alpha cosine beta plus cosine alpha sine beta. So immediately I want you to make a note here. Notice how the sine stays the same here. So sine stays. Now for cosine, notice how it's cosine alpha plus beta, and it's cosine alpha cosine beta minus sine alpha sine beta. So notice how here the sign changes. Then look at the bottom. Tan alpha plus beta is equal to tan alpha plus tan beta over 1 minus tan alpha tan beta. So here you want to notice that on the top, the sign stays. On the bottom, the sign changes. And that makes sense because tangent is, again, sine of theta over cosine of theta. And sine stays and cosine is switching or changes. So again, you have to memorize those after today. And I'll send you guys a document on why this works in case you're wondering. But for those who don't really wonder, that's okay too. We're just going to practice using them. Now, if it's minus, it's really easy. In a different color, notice how I'm notating a minus here. All you do is you just change the signs. So sine alpha minus beta is the same thing, just with a minus. If it's cosine alpha minus beta, it's the same thing, but with a plus. And if it's tan alpha minus beta, the top will stay, tan alpha minus tan beta, and the bottom will switch, 1 plus tan alpha times tan beta. Now notice how here, this is very important to understand, right here, these are 6 formulas. But I want you to remember them like this because it'll consolidate it in your head. But again, you have to understand there are 6 formulas here. So knowing that, let's go straight to our first question. Find the exact value of cosine 75 degrees. So we understand that 75, if you imagine where that would be, that's a little before 90. And of course, we don't actually know that in our speed quiz values, right? You couldn't find cosine 75. But with the sum formula, we can do it. We can think of 75 as 2 angles we do know that add to 75. So quickly, let's think of 30 and 45. This is your alpha and beta, and let's plug it into your formula. Cosine alpha, cosine beta. So I'll write it out for you, but you don't have to do this once you're good at this. Minus sine alpha, sine beta. That's just cosine 30, cosine 45, minus sine 30, sine 45. Now we're going to evaluate this. Cosine 30, that's just root 3 over 2. Cosine 45 is root 2 over 2. Minus sine 30 is 1/2. Sine 45 is root 2 over 2. This becomes root 6 minus root 2, all divided by 4. And there's your answer. Now you could have also done, so I write or here, you could have done cosine of 45 and 30. That wouldn't really matter if you switched it. But what you could not have done is something like this, 60 and 15. This is not going to work, so I'll put a big red X through this. That's not going to work because you don't know 15. Both angles you choose have to be ones we can actually work out. So 45, 30, 60, those are all going to be the ones you want to work with. Let's try one more. Sine 7 pi over 12. So again, it wants to see the sum formula, which makes sense because it'll be easier to add to 7 rather than to subtract. So we're going to quickly think of two things that add to 7 pi over 12. I recommend leaving it as over 12 and then reduce it. So through some thinking, we're going to write 3 pi over 12, 4 pi over 12, and that's because that's going to reduce to pi over 4 plus pi over 3. Now doing that part would just take some practice. You have to get good at working with fractions. And now we just do the formula. Sine alpha, so again think of that as alpha and beta, sine alpha cosine beta plus cosine alpha sine beta. And again, once you're good at this, you can skip that step. I just like writing it out. So that would be sine pi over 4 cosine pi over 3 plus cosine pi over 4 sine pi over 3. Now we just evaluate. So sine pi over 4, that is root 2 over 2. Cosine pi over 3, that would be 1/2. Cosine pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And sine pi over 3 is root 3 over 2. And look, we get root 2 plus root 6, all divided by 4. And we'll box that. So in this example, we have cosine pi over 12. And notice how we're going to use the difference formula. That's because this is 1 pi over 12, and it'd be much easier to subtract to get to 1 pi rather than to add. So quickly think to yourself what two numbers you'd subtract to that. So that would be 4 pi over 12 and 3 pi over 12. And then that will reduce to pi over 3 and pi over 4. Now we just use the formula. Let's go straight to it. Cosine pi over 3, cosine pi over 4. And this is cosine, so the sign is going to switch. So we're going to put plus sine pi over 3, sine pi over 4. Now we evaluate. This is 1 over 2 times root 2 over 2 plus root 3 over 2 times root 2 over 2. Let's simplify. Root 2 plus root 6 all over 4. And there's our answer. Okay, so that was probably the harder part of today. These next two are going to get a little easier. So when you look at this expression right here, right here, a lot of people think they try to look at each piece individually and try to work these 4 pieces out. Don't do that. What you want to do is think of these as like alpha and beta. So call this alpha, beta, alpha, beta. And I'll even write that for you. Sine alpha cosine beta minus cosine alpha sine beta. If you look at it in this form, it should become clear what to do. We're going to use the formulas you've been working with, but go backwards. This will reduce to sine of alpha minus beta, which is simply sine of 80 degrees minus 20 degrees, which is sine of 60 degrees, which is root 3 over 2. So those are really fun because you just go backwards, they're really fast. So if we go straight down, look at this one. So think of that as alpha and beta, alpha, beta. This is the cosine formula. This is simply cosine alpha minus beta. So this is cosine of 40 minus 10 degrees. That's cosine of 30 degrees. And look, that's easy. That's root 3 over 2. And we're done. Okay, good job. We have one more example to do. This is the tan one. So 75, let's break that out. Let's make that tan of 30 and 45. Let's do the formula. Tangent of alpha plus tangent of beta, all divided by 1 minus tan alpha, tan beta. So again, that's just using the formula. Now we break it down. Tan 30 is root 3 over 3. Tan 45 is 1 over 1 minus root 3 over 3 times 1. So let's not write that times 1. So at this point, all we're going to do is clear the complex fractions. So I'm going to multiply the whole thing by 3 over 3. Again, what that's going to do is just get rid of the fraction in the fraction. So this whole thing will reduce to root 3 plus 3 over 3 minus root 3. Okay, now I want you guys to box that. We're going to stop there. So in your notes, make sure you write this. Don't rationalize. We're going to leave these alone like that. We're only going to clear, so only clear complex fractions. On your homework, it's the same thing. The book will have you rationalize, but don't do that. For our class, I'll take that answer. That's perfectly fine. Okay, that's it. Good job.